I'm Kelsey. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I'm wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and today I'm doing a type of video that I've never done on this channel before, and that is a round of the Try a Chapter tag. Now this is a pretty popular type of video that's been going around YouTube for a while, and this was a tag created by Malia from Book Paradise. I'll link her original video down below. And the point is that this is a thing you can do to help choose from a variety of books which ones you actually want to read by reading a chapter of each and giving your reactions to just that first chapter. And I've never really considered doing this before because I am not a mood reader. I plan my TBRs pretty well in advance and I tend to stick to them. But right now I am in a situation where I have a bunch of books to read by a deadline and only time to read one of them, and I have to decide which one I am going to prioritize. And these are things in the Hugo voter packet. Hugo voting closes at the end of this month, and there's a bunch of stuff that I still haven't picked up yet. I am currently reading one book in print that's one of the last things that is Hugo associated that I had in print, and that's The Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Bujold. This is the first in the World of the Five Gods series, which is nominated in the series category, and this is a priority for me because it's one of the books that I already owned in print form. I can generally have one book that I'm working on in print and one that I'm also working on in ebook form, sort of in tandem, and I think by the end of the month I can finish The Curse of Chalion plus one ebook from the Hugo voter packet. So this here is my Kindle, and on it I have some things. There are 5 things from the Hugo voter packet that were all in my TBR for the month that I was hoping to get to and haven't gotten to yet that are all on my Kindle. 5 is, I think, the traditional number of books to pick for the Try a Chapter tag, so this is super convenient. I'm gonna tell you what they are. I'm gonna go read a chapter of each of them and come back and tell you what I thought about that chapter. At the end, I'll decide which book to read, and I think I'm going to do these in the order of what I sort of predict would be my priority if I were picking up all of these books. And I'm gonna see if that holds. I'm gonna see if the earlier books are the ones I'm actually most compelled by, or if something later in the list comes and sneaks up on me. So number 1 is going to be The Cloud Roads by Martha Wells, which is the first book in the Books of the Raksura, which is nominated in the series category. The second book is going to be another series starter for a series category nominee, and that is City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. City of Stairs and the next book on this list, Heroine Complex, are both NetGalley downloads from the Hugo voter packet. You get like a link so that you get the NetGalley download of it. So because I've downloaded both of these, I have to read them both eventually, or my NetGalley review percentage will suffer, and it is already suffering because I've taken these 2 months off of reading review copies to read Hugo voter packet stuff. But Heroine Complex is the first in a series by Sarah Kuhn, who is up for the John W. Campbell Award for Best New Writer. Next, we have another John W. Campbell Award nominee, which is Rivers Solomon for An Unkindness of Ghosts. This is a sci-fi debut novel about a generation ship and some social injustice. This one and the next book and final book on this list, The Art of Starving by Sam J. Miller, are both PDFs. So they are not going to read as easily on my Kindle, I don't think. So that's going to be a sort of logistical challenge that is going to play into my decision here in addition to what I actually think of the contents of the first chapter. The Art of Starving is one of the nominees in the new young adult category that's technically not a Hugo, but pretty darn close. So off I go to read the first chapter of one of these books. I'll be back in a lickety-split. Okay, I'm back, and I've read the first chapter of The Cloud Roads. I realized that this is probably going to be a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, because first chapters of SFF books, especially adult SFF books and first books in big series, there can be a lot of kind of dense world building in that first chapter, and I read those first chapters really, really slowly, and it takes me a while to get into it. This was a longer first chapter. It took a while. I'm already losing my daylight, and I'm gonna be doing the rest of this video in the dark. But this first chapter introduced us to a character named Moon. And this seems to be a world where the people who inhabit it aren't human. They're all sorts of other species of people that exist in this fantasy world, and Moon is a shapeshifter of some sort who doesn't really know where his people are from. And Moon is a hunter for a camp of people that are of a species that isn't his, that he is living with. And it seems like he's lived with a bunch of different groups of people in this sort of foresty, wooded setting. There's a lot of sort of description of the forest setting and stuff. But he's an outsider in this society. He hasn't lived there long, and the people here don't know that he is a shapeshifter, and he can turn into this, like, winged flying creature. But he sneaks off at night and turns into his flying creature self to go investigate this floating island, and he gets into a fight with some big winged beast that lives there, and he's gonna have to figure out what to do with this information about this winged creature that's in the area, given that he doesn't want to reveal how he obtained that information. So I felt like this chapter was slow going, soaking in the world building, and just trying to get a grasp on all of the important information. Nothing in this chapter has really piqued my interest or grabbed my attention yet, but this does seem like a world that I'm curious to know more about. On to the next book. Considerably later to again bemoan that I chose to do this to myself. This was another long, dense first chapter full of world building, and this is the part of, like, any new book or series that I take the longest time with. I'm realizing that I do really take first chapters of books very slowly, trying to get a handle on what's going on. So maybe this wasn't the best idea for me. But the first chapter of The City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett does in fact have a title. This is a book where the chapters have titles. It's called Someone Even Worse. Before, I think, each chapter there's like a passage or a quote from something that's an in-world text source. So before this chapter we get something that's supposedly from the Book of the Red Lotus Part 4, and it seems to be a religious meditation on, like, going to war to impose your religion upon others. The chapter proper begins in the middle of a court proceeding. This is told in the present tense, so it's a more unique writing style in terms of level of technology. There are telegraphs, for example, as a point of reference. So this is already sort of a more challenging, unique setup than The Cloud Roads. The first chapter of The Cloud Roads had a lot of information you had to absorb, but it was still a very sort of standard introduction to your character going about their lives. And there was nothing particularly stylistically noteworthy about the writing. So the point of view character for this first half of the chapter is like the city governor who is presiding over this trial. And she is of the colonial imperial government of this continent. And the trial that's going on is for an infringement of the laws that prevent the native people of this continent from displaying or talking about or referencing anything to do with their old religion. Their gods, I think, are supposedly dead. The guy on trial is the owner of a millinery shop who has committed the crime of putting a symbol on the sign of his millinery shop that resembles the symbol of one of these old forbidden gods. So this trial itself isn't important to the plot, but it's how we're getting introduced to sort of the colonial system of rule in this city, in this world, and all of the injustices that come with it. And then the trial is interrupted because, oh my gosh, there's been a murder! And then we switch to the second half of the chapter where we have a new point of view character who is waiting at a train station to meet someone who is coming in on the train. And what I'm assuming here is that that someone on the train is the someone even worse of the chapter title. And basically the time that this guy is spending waiting for the train is spent where he's, thinking about more things that provide us with more world building and context. So this certainly seems like a really intellectually engaging start to a novel, but I don't yet have any idea of whether or not there are any characters I should be caring for, or who they are, or why I would be interested in them. So it's gotten really late, and I don't know if I'm gonna have time to read the rest of the first chapters of the other 3 books tonight. But regardless of when that is, I will be back when I've read the first chapter of Heroine Complex. For me, it may be tonight, or it may be tomorrow, but for you, it's gonna be in just a second. So I took a bit of a break, but I am back, and I have now read the first chapter of Heroine Complex by Sarah Kuhn, and this one, thank goodness, was a short first chapter, and it was easy to read. Basically, we open on the scene that you see on the top half of the book cover, where the superhero Aveda Jupiter is doing battle with demons who are coming through a portal in the form of cupcakes. Our protagonist, Evie, is Aveda's personal assistant, and she is tasked with filming the cupcake battle for a live stream for Aveda's adoring fans. So we get this immediate dynamic of the beleaguered assistant and the sort of narcissistic superhero who maybe seems to care more about what the fans think about her heroics than, like, the actual heroics themselves. She's learned all these flashy battle moves to show off for the camera, and oh, she wants to make sure that Evie gets the flashy battle moves in close-up. But once the video goes live, some of the social media reactions are maybe that people are more focused on some imperfections in Aveda's physical appearance than, like, the expertise of her battle moves, and she goes into an absolute hissy fit. But yeah, maybe there's something really there. Like, man, you're gonna worry about my zit when I just, like, kicked these cupcake demons with, like, super crazy battle kicks? So it's, like, total crazy nonsense, and it took, like, a fraction of the brain power that making it through the first chapters of those first 2 books took, but, like, it's maybe kind of winning out for me because maybe I want to read this. It's kind of filled me with delight, and, like, I want to keep reading about the cupcake demons and the super heroine's personal assistant. So, the last 2 books, I will have to read those chapters tomorrow and catch up with you then. I'm back, it's tomorrow, and I have just read the first chapter of An Unkindness of Ghosts. This was another relatively short first chapter, and in this chapter we meet our protagonist Aster as she is amputating the foot of a child. And we've picked up some hints about the setting. We know we're on a spaceship or generation ship that is large enough that the different decks all have different cultures. We're on T deck, and Aster encounters some linguistic and cultural things that are slightly different variants of what she's used to. And we're told that, like, decks Q, R, S, and T are all kind of like a big nation. The prevailing atmosphere of this chapter is this oppressive cold. There's a blackout of some sort. We know that these blackouts have been happening in some form or another for 25 years. And so there's, like, some makeshift technology to get by. The people Aster is with have concocted these jars full of chemicals that you can shake to make light, and then she mocks up this makeshift stove with, like, a tin can and rags and alcohol. I would say of all of the first chapters I've read so far, this is the only one that's given me a protagonist that I immediately feel like I need to know more about. She's, like, brilliant at medicine, but bad at social interactions. You know that her mother's dead and she never knew her mother, so I just want to know more about her. So I have 1 more first chapter to read, and then I'll be back, and then I'll have a tough decision to make. Okay, Okay, I'm back and I've read the first chapter of The Art of Starving, and this may be a very powerful book, but I don't think it's for me. It's very heavy teen issues, which I sort of knew it was going to be, and so far I cannot tell what the speculative element is. There must be a speculative element because it's up for a sci-fi and fantasy award, but one chapter in, and we don't know what that is yet. But basically, our narrator is a teenager, a 17-year-old guy named Matt, who basically has, like, all of the teenager problems. This is sort of written like a rule book that Matt is writing for having a human body, with like rule number 1 as the chapter header for each chapter and rule number 2 is the chapter header for the second chapter. It seems in this chapter header like Matt is trying to limit his calorie intake, which fits with what I know about this book. I know that it deals with eating disorders. At the beginning we learn that Matt has been to a psychiatrist at the order of his school, and the psychiatrist has deemed him potentially suicidal, and he has kept his mother from seeing that report. He shows up at school having destroyed the psychiatrist's report and faces some bullies who are taunting him because he is gay. Also, his sister is missing, and he thinks it has something to do with one of these guys at his school. So very, very dark, very teen problems, all of the things that can go wrong with teenagerhood. I did not like books like this when I was a teenager. I think I probably like them even less now, even though I'm sure there's an important target audience for this. I don't think it's me. So for me right now, this is surprisingly down to sort of a tie between Heroine Complex and An Unkindness of Ghosts. If I had more time left in the month, I would read both of these. Let's see, the other two that I'm dismissing right now were the ones that were sort of initially the books that I thought were highest priority for me. I'm dismissing The Cloud Roads for the time being, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because it seems closest in tone to the other book I'm reading right now, which is The Curse of Chalian, and I would rather pick up a second book that was something a little different. And while the first chapter of City of Stairs was really thought-provoking and it made me want to dig into the ideas of that world, I also know that's a longer book and it felt like it was going to be denser writing, and I don't know if I will have time to finish that. Heroine Complex and An Unkindness of Ghosts are appealing to me for very different reasons. An Unkindness of Ghosts seemed to have this really visceral, stark setting in its premise and a character that I want to know more about. And Heroine Complex just seemed like the most fun thing I could possibly think to pick up right now. And since I am having a hard time making a decision, and my coin from the coin toss from my Booktubeathon TBR video is still sitting right here, I think I am going to turn this one to a coin toss as well. So heads is going to be Heroine Complex, tails is going to be An Unkindness of Ghosts, and I'm going to do it on the floor right in front of my chair here because that worked for my previous video, so give me a sec. Oh, it went over sideways, but... And it is heads, so I am reading Heroine Complex, and then sometime soon after that, I think I will want to continue on with An Unkindness of Ghosts as well, but it's not going to happen by the end of this month. So here is my winner. This is the second book that I'm going to be picking up right now, and it was not what I thought the results of this try a chapter tag would be. I didn't really think through when I started this that first chapters of some SFF books are like really steep learning curves to get into, and I do give those chapters like all the time they require for me to understand because that pays off later. But that meant those first 2 chapters that I read were just so much work, especially compared with the later 3 that were just a different type of book. Those big 2 were like introductions to big fantasy worlds, and the other things were not, and that really affected how those first chapters read. I am really glad it didn't continue to go like that for the rest of these first chapters, because otherwise I would have thrown my hands up in despair and said, oh my gosh, why did I choose to do a try a chapter tag? That's how I was feeling at the beginning. This was the wrong choice for me. I could be 5 chapters into one of these books by the time I got through this. But having come out the end with a really interesting, unpredictable result, I am glad that I did this. I don't really usually think about first chapters on their own. Whatever those first impressions are tend to be buried pretty deep by the time I get to the end of the book and have more fully formed opinions. So what about you? Have you ever done a try a chapter tag like this? Let me know. Have you read any of these books? Are you planning to? Do you make judgments on books based on the first chapter? And if so, do you remember those judgments by the end of the book? Do you treat first chapters differently if you're reading different genres? Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.